is for two people. Refuah Shalema for Dina Bas Sarah. Needs are for Shalema. Physical, she should have Refuah Nefesh, Refuah Haguf, and Rus Bas Mordechai. That is Menucha's mother at her fourth yahrzeit.
Rachel Miriam Bat-Shifayesha, who's waiting for an organ of some kind out of town, and now she was put in ICU yesterday.
We're going to be talking about a topic that relates to all of this. And what we're going to do is we're starting, open up your pages to 609 in the Chumash, or actually you have your notes, all right? Our parasha today is Tazria Matzorah. Today, of course, is Yom Ha'atzmaut, and the history of this Israel, the modern state of Israel, with the miracles, the hidden miracles, and the enormous contributions to society that have come out of Israel, and the strange relationship between the two, meaning that because of the pressure and the challenges and the difficulty and the fact that we're forced to be ingenious and invent and outmaneuver everybody else, therefore we have found within ourselves, this is going to be a very important point today, we have found within ourselves the capacity to innovate and to be inspired and to never feel defeated and to help the world. It's coming from inside, not because Mashiach has come and the world sees it that we are, that our message is true and everybody is helping us and giving us anything we need. That's not why that's not where it's coming from. It's coming from resourcefulness, from digging deep inside, from finding our path against the odds. That's where it's coming from. And sometimes, and as we know, not sometimes, all the time, that's really when it comes from us. That's when when it has our name on it and we take credit for it, which we're allowed to, and we become, as we always talk about, that source of that light, that art comes. Hashem retreats a little bit so that it has to come from within us, and we do get the credit for it, and we should feel gratified for the fact that it's our efforts that led to it. And this is going to be a very strong theme of today. So let's start. It's Parshas Tazria and Matzorah. The ideas are based on Rav Moshe Shapiro. How shocking. Okay. So here is, let's look at the first pasuk and the first Rashi. First and second pasukim, okay? It is about the tumah that a woman endures when she gives birth. Again, before we even start, we did this last week. What is tumah? What is tahara? Tumah is when?
Separation.
Yeah, but what's our mashal that we are using now? We're using a different one right now. The curtain, right? We're going to talk about that curtain. The curtain. You can't see the whole behind stage. The whole entire behind stage, okay, meaning all the different variables in play. Endless, infinite, incomprehensible amount of variables in play that not only are directing us, but are working off our choices. The combination of how Hashem is directing everything towards a predetermined end, which is what? The curtain going up. How do we say that in Hebrew? Malakol haaretz deya es Hashem. Everything will be completely overwhelmed, filled with this das. Das, we mentioned, is the knowledge that what's going on here is part of a huge story, and we live with confidence in that. And when that curtain goes up and we see the entire maneuverings and mechanism behind the scenes that explain everything that went on in our life, and we see both how everything's going forward and how our choices are very much part of how things go forward, that is called das, okay? That is Olam Haba, that is the experience of Olam Haba. And we're going to see in a second, the combination of Hashem's plan and our choices is referred to as the combination of Hashem's directing the world and our choices and how they work together is called? Oh, you guys know this. The divine chariot, the Masa Merkava. Remember? Okay, we'll get there in a second. So, this topic of Tumah and Tahara. Tumah is when a person just, in a sense of defeat and despair and self-pity and sadness and depression, says, all there is what I see and what's happening, and I'm in front of the curtain, which Shlomo HaMelech calls what? in Koheles, what's it also called? Tachas Hashemesh, and under the sun. And I'm defeated by it. I'm over. It's just temporary. It's passing. I can't control it, and no matter. And I try to control it, and identify only with what I see and what it is and what I see around me and everybody else. And here in front of the curtain, in my limited life and my limited capacity
That's Tumah, you said.
That's Tumah. Just forgetting that this experience that we have here in this world in front of the curtain is just part of, again, a huge plan, a huge story. And the things we do help raise that curtain, or maybe not raise it, but pull it apart a little bit to see through to the other side, and until eventually it goes up completely. So Tumah Tumah always is associated with death, simply because when somebody dies, if we don't remember the Jewish message, what we saw at Har Sinai, okay, then we say death means it's over. And that leads to all those negative feelings. Okay, that's called Tumah. So that also kicks in when we give birth. And we're going to see why in a minute. Okay? So, V'daber Shem al Moshe lemor, daber el b'nei Yisrael lemor, Isha ki tazriya v'yolda zachar, a woman who conceives and gives birth to a male. V'tama shivas yamim, and she shall be impure 7 days. Ki mei nidas dosa titma, just like when she's a nida, that same type of tumah. And on the 8th day there'll be a bris, and we know we talked last week. Remember about 7 and 8. Remember that? We talked about 7 and 8. 7 times 7, 50. Go back and listen to it. Okay, we talked about 7 and 8. Now, the idea of being tummy when a person gives birth, just like we're tummy when we're nida. Okay, what is that about? All right. Again, birth, Rav Hirsch explains, we're going to see it more deeply here. Nida is, it makes sense. Nida is a potential life that didn't happen, which makes us feel, could be PMS, is tied into this. This is just, there's no control. I couldn't create life here. Or even if I wasn't trying, the fact that I'm on a regular cycle, who am I fooling? I'm like part of the animal kingdom. We're all on a cycle. We're part of nature. This whole thing that we're above nature, that we can affect things, that we can do anything eternal or transcend. It's not true. We're subjects of nature. That's Tumah. That's in front of the curtain. Why birth? Why at birth? This is the question. You've given birth. That's life. Where's the Tumah? Okay. Now you'll tell me, okay, think about it. When a fetus is in the womb, the famous medrash, right? Which is what? What's it doing in there? It knows, it sees, the medrash says it sees me sofa olam at sofa olam. In other words, there is a pre-conscious state. There's a subconscious state that still is within us, that we once had, okay, mankind in general, and every neshama in particular. There was an initial state where we existed without the curtain. The neshama was totally part of the everythingness, we'll call it, of Hashem's existence, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu then takes that essence, that knowledge, that identity. And Hashem allows it to continue to exist in a physical, finite, temporary person. So we always have a vague sense. There's something bigger that I can't see. There's something more that's just beyond my grasp. There's something I'm part of. Everyone has a vague sense of it. And by the way, that is where dissatisfaction comes from, and that is, in some ways, a very healthy thing. I know there's more. I know I'm missing something. I know that, this little life I have it can't be the whole story. It can't be the definition of who I am. I'm looking for something greater to devote myself to. Right? That's a healthy sense. That comes from the neshama. So when a person gives birth, by definition what's happening as a child becomes part of the physical world, tachas Hashemesh, is that curtain is dropping for that neshama, to give an opportunity to operate in this world. So that's where the Tumah comes in. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, if you look in the Rashi, Rashi says the following. Amrav Samlai, Kishem Shitzira Social Adam, Achar Kol Behema, Chaya Va'of, B'masa Bereshech, Masa Bereshech, Kach Toraso Nit Parsha, Achar Toras Behema, Chaya Va'of. What's Rashi's problem? The answer is, what's the question he's dealing with? Rav Simlai says, even just as the formation of man in Masa Bereshis took place after all the other animals were formed, we were on the 6th day, so too the discussion of man in the state of Tumah and Tahara takes place after the discussion, which he's referring to last week's Parsha Shmini, of Tumah and Tahara in animals. Because last week we spoke about which animals are Tumah, which animals are Tahar, okay? So now, and we're not going to go into that right now, but after discussing Tumah and Tahara in terms of animals, we get to Tumah and Tahara in terms of people. When we're Tumah, when we're Tahar. Some animals are always Tumah, some are always Tahar. But a human being kind of vacillates between both states. Sometimes we're Tahar, and sometimes we're Tumah. Why? Rashi's question is, wait, where does man stand in the pyramid of creation? Aren't we on the top? So why are we coming last all the time? First the animals and then man. First to animals, their state of Tumah Tahara, and then man. And Rashi's saying, yes, that is the pattern. Just like we're mentioned last in the Bria, we're going to be mentioned last in terms of Tumah and Tahara. Okay, that's the answer. So somehow man being mentioned last, okay, in relationship to the animals, must clearly signify what? Saving the last for best. Achrona achrona chaviva. On the other hand, Rashi's saying coming last generally means it's not so much saving the best for last, but it's like you're the last thing on the totem pole. So which one is it? Okay. So here the Medrash comes in. Vayikra Rabbah comes in. All right, and we're just going to skip to the look at this at the second page, okay? Look at 5. Turn the page to 5. No. I'm sorry. Look at the section. It's actually the second page on the very top. Okay. If man merits, we say to him, you were created before all of creation. If not, we say to him, the mosquito preceded you. What is this talking? Okay, what it means, if we're married, we say, you were the purpose of creation, you were first. If not, we say, you were last. What is this thing, you were first versus you were last? To say that man was first when he's mentioned last, that's clearly making us connect to what idea? Good. Exactly. L'chadodi, sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. The final end, creation is the initial intention. In other words, Hashem intended to create a person, and then went through all the preliminary stages, and eventually did the man, which is the humanity pinnacle of creation. So that's Sof Masa, the end, final product, really represents the first initial intention. Think about it. When you want to build a house, first you conceive of the house, and then you start gathering the materials and building it, and eventually there's a house. What happens at the end represents the first intention. So man is the intention of creation, but if man doesn't marry, we say, mosquitoes were created before you. There is this possibility of being first or being last. That's what we're going to look into. So, okay. Vayikra Rabbah. Okay. So here is the Medrash. When a woman conceives, the Medrash immediately attaches a pasuk in Tehillim to help us understand this idea of Tumah and birth. Okay. The Tumah that descends upon an neshama in a certain way, that curtain that drops, that causes the person now to be challenged by the job of being in front of it, tachas hashemesh, okay, but also never forgetting that they're part of a big picture. That state that could lead to, kind of getting lost here, or if not, that great state of being where a person keeps everything in balance. So he brings us to a pasuk in Tehillim. Okay, the pasuk is Achor v'kedem tzaratani v'tashes alai kapecha. Okay, we're going to go through this pasuk carefully. Achor means acharei. Okay, afterwards. Afterwards and kedem, before you formed me. After and before you formed me. Again, sometimes we're thought of as after everything, or and after all of the physical lower level creations, or maybe because Hashem conceived of us first, we're before everything. But before and after you created me, potentially both, and you placed your palm, not your yad, your palm upon me. Whenever we speak about a body part of Hashem, okay, again, how do we think about it? Hashem has something called the palm. We're going to define it. In order for us to have a bit of an understanding of what that means, Hashem created the physical world and put into the physical world, into the physical being, a mashal. Hashem said, you know what? I'm going to make you with something called a palm. And the way you use it is going to help you understand what the energy, the power I have called the palm of Hashem. Okay? It's not that we're choosing a word that we know and saying, okay, we have a palm, so we're making a mashal, Hashem has a palm. It's the opposite. Hashem conducts the world with something called the palm of his hand. In order to help us understand that, Hashem gave us palms of our hands. Same thing with children. We have a relationship with Hashem called banim lamakom. Am Yisrael has b'ni b'chori, my firstborn. Hashem says, I'm going to try to help you understand how I relate to the world. I'm going to have you give birth to children. When you understand how you relate to them and how you feel about them, then you'll understand retroactively your relationship with me. So, okay? Akiva Tatz, it describes this very nicely in World Mask, okay? This switch, the shift in how we think about it. Because you can't have a word in the Torah that's not true. That's just a mashal. Really, Hashem doesn't have a hand. But we're just saying it to help us. No, Hashem actually does have a palm. Our palm is the mashal. Clear? Okay. So, we're going to understand this. What does achor v'kedem taratani? According to the Zohar, Moshe Shapiro brings it down. It says, after Masa Bereshis and before Masa Merkava. Okay. What are we talking about here? Rambam says in the beginning of Mor Nevuchim that both Masa Bereshis and Masa Merkava are of the most esoteric, profound, deepest secrets of the existence. Masa Bereshis, which we learn in Chumash, but we know when we're learning it that we're not meant to take everything literally. It's the tip of the iceberg of something so deep and so profound. Masa Bereshis reflects, okay, and is in a continuum with Masa Merkava. What we learn about a Masa Bereshis is the running of this world, how this world operates, okay, in front of the curtain, so to speak. And everything that operates in this world is directly connected to what's behind the curtain, which is called the Masa Merkava, which only the Nevi'im, when they entered into a state of Kedusha, Tahara, they could break through, get a glimpse of that world, and it was an extremely traumatic experience for their physical body, which went into convulsions and seizures. The only one that could calmly break through into that world and come back and do this on a regular basis without preparation was Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's called Hashem speaking to him panim el panim, when he was awake, without having to fall into a trance and be overcome. And this is referred to as Moshe having, by the way, aspaklaria me'ira. So right through. That's Tahara, okay? Not everything at all, but more than anybody else could see. When Moshe, remember we talked about last week, when Moshe said, Horeini nas kvodecha, let me see more, Hashem said, no. So it can't be, because then you can't see, you cease to exist. Okay, and then, now, so the Zohar is saying, you created me after Masa Bereshis, meaning you created me, the pinnacle, the purpose of Masa Bereshis, Sof Masa b'machshava tchila, the human being and the human being who's connected with their neshama, Am Yisrael, and anybody who joins Am Yisrael, who understands what happened at Har Sinai and aligns their lifestyle and their thinking to it, right? We understand that everything in the physical world is created. Hakol bara lechvodo. Everything is created to be a kli, some sort of vessel to help us live and see and connect to the masa merkava, that which is the explanation of what's here. We said the Nevi'im used to break through. Yechezkel is not the only one who saw it. Yechezkel wrote it down because he was the last one to see it before this long gullus.
The others did see it? The Nevi'im did see it?
They all saw it. That's what Nevuah is. The aspects of the Masa Merkava. Kabbalah is the legacy of the Nevi'im, dealing with what those Nevi'im saw. Now, what they saw was not in picture form. They had to recruit their imaginative faculties to take those ideas of what they saw and find mishalim to explain it to the people. So when you read about the Masa Merkava, about a chariot and driven by various animals with various faces, this is not literal stuff. These are mishalim, deep Kabbalistic mishalim. And the idea, though, of a chariot is the following. We've done this before. I think we mentioned it last week, right? You see a horse and you see a chariot. The horse is running and it's sweating and it's panting. And if you're watching, you say, oh, the horse is clearly dragging the chariot. But if you look a little closer, you see inside the chariot there's somebody. And actually, that person in the chariot is the driver. And that's why the horse is going where it's going. Now, this arrangement is complicated. We often think that the horse is determining where the whole chariot is going, meaning life in this world, everything that's happening. But actually, it's not true. The driver is determining. Now, what's interesting about the Masa Merkava is the unity, the combination of our bechira, the horse deciding where it wants to go, and then the driver letting it, but still recalculating, redirecting it, so that it gets to where the driver wants it to go anyway, but it gets there based on the horse's, decisions. Now, the horse's decisions are not going to be very intelligent very often because it doesn't see Google Earth. It doesn't know every possible path and the straightest path and the clearest path. So it's making a lot of mistakes and wrong turns, but it's going to get there. Okay? Now, what we're saying is we are created after Masa Bereshis and before the Masa Merkava, meaning we're created after Sof Masa b'machshava tchila, so that means we are the first, we're the intention. Okay, everything, this whole story is played out through us. But before the Masa Merkava, the Medrash says, same idea. We're the machshava that created the Masa Merkava. We're the purpose that Hashem put this whole system into play. Okay, so Achor v'kedem sartani means that the human being is the absolute purpose and center of existence. And the challenge of the human being is to negotiate that curtain that must be there, but not to let it fool us. Okay? If it's not there, we just merge back into Hashem. And that's what it means. Vatashes alai kapecha. You placed your palm upon me. The palm we're going to see is really another word for the curtain. For the curtain. The palm of Hashem, which he places over, where Moshe, covers his eyes. We cover our eyes in Shema. Hashem, we're going to see, places it over the eyes of Moshe, so that Moshe would not be sucked in when he asked us, on the mountain there by the second luchos. So let's go into it. So this Medrash goes on to say, if a person merits, meaning they negotiate this balance well, he inherits two worlds, this one and the coming one. We know how to handle this world right, and we are not then astonished and shocked and horrified when the curtain goes up and become part of the next world. We're gratified and relieved. Okay, it's not a dichotomy. So we get this world right. Let's talk about that for a second. How is it that if we negotiate this balance right, we get this world right? Because if we think that it's all is just what we see, then all we can do, and we talk about this a lot, is apply our logic and the limited, the little bit of resources at our potential to say, okay, this is a situation. How can I best take control of it to ensure my security and my safety and my well-being and my, status in this world? And we scramble to use our logic, which doesn't explain much because we don't see the whole picture. And as we said, all those limited things to try to create security for ourselves. And when we can't accomplish it, we are beset with, again, it's all based on fear, right? And then if we can't secure everything for ourselves, which we cannot ever, we are beset with anxiety, depression, defeatism, self-pity, anger, hopelessness, etc., etc. So you don't get this world either. You definitely don't get this world. So the Medrash says, if a person negotiates this right, merits, he inherits two worlds. And that's what the Pasuk in Tehillim means. You have created me after and before. And if not, now here's where we're going to get to the next part. He comes to give reckoning, as it says, Vatashes alai kapecha. You placed your hand upon me. A person gives reckoning. What that means is, as we said last week, Ein adam niftar min ha'olam ad sheroas pnei hashchina. At the moment of death, no neshama leaves this world until he sees the Shechina. We said, very important. We always think of Shechina as Hashem permeating us. It's true. It's one way to describe it. But you can also say Shechina means to dwell. Hashem, the indwelling of God in us. What do we say? Shechina really means our indwelling in the everythingness, right? In Hashem's existence. The fact that we, like the fetus, are dwelling now. When a person gets lost here in this little, world we live in, they will give a reckoning because Hashem placed His palm, as we're going to see, upon us, the curtain. But they're going to give a reckoning because that's the moment when the curtain goes up, and they're going to be overwhelmed with that sense of regret because there were so many logical and, for the Jewish people, historical and endless amounts of signs, that is what that there was a lot going on behind the curtain, and that reckoning is the moment. It starts at the moment of Patira, and Hashem is going to say, of course I put my palm on you, but that wasn't so that you should be lost here. That was just so you should fulfill your role as a human being with a sense of separation and autonomy. But I also gave you a zillion hints of that there was something on the other side. Yeah.
Does this relate also to Kaf Yerecha in Vayishlach?
I don't know. I don't know.
Stop us from.
I don't know. It's interesting. Something to look into. What does the Kaf? I'm just rushing a little bit because we schmoozed about South Africa. What does the Kaf of Hashem mean? So from Eov here, by the way, so many interesting words and phrases are only understood because they're used for the first time or the only time or defined best in Sefer Eov. Eov is really the source of so many definitions of words in the Torah. Okay, so here Eov says the following: Kapcha me'alai harchek. Please distance your palm from upon me. Take it away. Okay? Ve'emascha al tevatani. But your awe should not frighten me. Okay? So Rashi says here, your kaf, your compulsion, meaning no. Okay, let's say this better. Like kaf, they're translating like fiyad datit, like it's an imperative. It's you must. Okay, what Eov is saying here is the following: by placing your palm, actually, let's go further. Let's define kaf first, and then go back to Eov. Look in 4a. This is by Moshe Rabbeinu. When he asked to see the whole thing, he says, Hareini nas kvodecha. Hashem says, no, you can't. But he says, this is what I will do. He says, I'm going to put you in the cleft of the rock. Okay, I'm going to put you in like a little in crop of the rock. V'haya ba'avor kvodi, my kavod will pass. V'samticha, and I will put you in the rock. V'sakosi kapi alecha, I am going to place my hand up, my palm upon you. Ad avri, until I pass. Okay. Shalo tirani, shalo tamas. That's what the explanation is. I'm going You know what? We didn't quote the whole pasuk here. Let me read you the whole pasuk. Shemos 33:22. 1 second. Here's the whole pasuk. Here. Vayomer Hashem. I'm going to pasuk 21. Vayomer Hashem. Hine makom iti. There's a place with me. V'nitzavta al hatzor. Okay. You may stand on the rock. This is all, again, deep layers of meaning. Vayomer, v'haya, and it'll be, v'avor kavodi, when my kavod, you know what the kavod means, right? That you see everything is an expression of Hashem. It's kind of like lifting the curtain a little bit. V'haya ba'avor kavodi, when my kavod passes, I'm not going to let you see it. V'samticha b'nikras hatzor, I'm going to put you in the cleft of the rock, where you're blocked. Visakosi kapi alecha, I will place my palm upon you, ad avri, until it all passes. Then v'hasirosi es kapi, I'm going to remove my hand. V'ra'isa es achora, you'll see my back. Okay? V'panai lo yareu, you will not see my face. So Hashem will reveal the kavod, but He won't let Moshe see it. And then when He stops revealing it, then He'll let Moshe see the back of it, whatever that means. Okay, so look at how Das Akanim explains Hashem putting His palm on Moshe. He says, "I will cover you with the palm of my right hand." This is a simile for the cloud God will place between Himself and Moshe. We find a similar expression in Eicha. Okay, in other words, I will act as a protective cloud in front of you to prevent you from seeing me. This is the palm. The palm is what prevents us from seeing Hashem directly. Because if we would, what would happen? We would know we don't exist, really, separately from Hashem. Okay? This is what Moshe understood himself when he came to the sneh, and what did he do? He didn't look. This is why we say Shema, because they Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusol Olam. By the way, it's the same reason why Rivka covered her face with a veil when she saw Yitzchak. The overwhelming presence of God in Yitzchak's face was too much for Rivka at that time. Why? Because after the Akedah, the only way Yitzchak could have told his father, make sure I'm tied tight enough so I don't flinch, so I don't spoil this, is because to Yitzchak, he saw that the physical life here was not some separate entity that he was going to hold on to at all costs, even in opposition to God. It was part of the big story. So if Hashem said, this part is over, that's okay. He let himself be elevated. After the Akedah, after experiencing this madrega, which essentially is actually disconnecting from this world, leaving this world, in Machshava, Yitzchak died. He went back into the big, he went back to where he came from. Physically, he continued to live, but he continued to live with that consciousness. So it does not say in the pasuk that he came down from the mountain. It says Avraham returned to the lads. Okay? But it doesn't tell you where Yitzchak was. We don't hear a thing about Yitzchak until Rivka's coming with Eliezer 3 years later. And then it says, Vayetze Yitzchak lasuach basadeh. Yitzchak comes out to Davin. And the Medrash says, Mehechan Yatza, where did he come from? Where's he been? Megan Eden Yatza. It doesn't mean he was dead. It means he was essentially disconnected from this world completely. Okay? He saw it as artificial. And by the way, the Midah of Yitzchak, which is Gevura, was holding on to himself here, not to let himself go. Discipline to hold on, not to let what happened to Nadav and Avihu happen to him. So what we were saying, Moshe, and so when Rivka covered her eyes, came from that. It was too much for her. So here, this is the concept of the kaf. Now, remember we said that a baby in the womb sees from one end of the world to the other. There is that palm isn't there yet. Okay, the palm is what happens with birth. That's where the potential for tumah comes in. The curtain drops. Okay, now here, look in 5. Okay. Okay, Rav Shmuel, here, they're quoting the original source of Shmuel Bar Nachman, says, when Hashem created the first man, he was from one end, basically man was from one end of the world to the other end. He created him to fill the entire world. Okay, that's the essence of man, is the potential to see oneself as part of the entire picture. But to be a person, what does Hashem have to do? How do we know that man was part of everything? Because it says, and you laid your hand upon me. If Hashem had not laid his hand upon us, we would not begin to conceive of ourselves or be able to operate as separate entities. We would just see ourselves as part of the everything, which we did exactly experience at Har Sinai, in which case, as you know, we cease to exist. Okay, now here comes the next part. So what is Tumah? Okay. Tumah is the loss of this level of from one end of the world to the other. Okay? Now, the fact that we once existed in this state, first man, the fetus, so to speak, okay, that leaves an imprint, that leaves a roshem. And all our lives we sense its loss and we're trying to reconnect to it. Okay, Tumah post-birth, and in regard to death, comes from the feeling of after all the animals. In other words, what happens if we forget that the reason we came after all the animals is not because we forget that it's that sof masa b'machshava techila, that we're the pinnacle, but we think we're just like all the animals. We're no different. We're an extension of. We're the most sophisticated of the animals. But in the end, we're victims of physicality like all the animals. That the mosquito came before you. Okay, that we come after all the animals. That Tumah approach. We're just more sophisticated, the highest level of the animals. That type of after all the animals, that's the Tumah. But the real purpose of coming after all the animals is the opposite. It's because we are the point of everything else. Everything here is all to be a vehicle for the kavod Hashem in this world, and we're supposed to learn from it all, draw from it all, and gain from it all. So I just want to add here a piece about lashon hara. What is lashon hara? When we speak lashon hara, it's strictly because we really have fallen into the trap, that tumah, that in front of the curtain, and all we see is the people around us, and it's one big, as we know, struggle to secure for ourselves some sort of sense of importance or status or security. And by definition, everyone else who has more than us or is doing better at this job is a threat to us. And so far, what we try to do is lashon hara, which leads to galus. Galus is galut, to expose. We just try to expose how they're really not all they're cracked up to be. They're really not as secure, not as well doing as well, etc. And we expose their shortcomings. This is all based on fear. When a person operates with the proper mindset, nobody else, no matter how successful the other person is, maybe in the same area that person's trying to succeed, is a threat, because everybody's here is doing their little part to raise that curtain. And if no one person can do it all, and if that's the goal, anybody else who does it, kol hakavod, because we all then benefit from it. And as long as I'm putting in effort to do it too, that's all that matters. And if somebody else does it in their way, or even in the way I'm doing it, but they do it better, kol hakavod, because Hashem is not judging on who's actually raising it. And Hashem is the raising is not necessarily a function of the success a person is having in their lifetime to raise it, but really raising the curtain is the result of the cumulative effort of every single person trying to do it. And sometimes when a person tries to do it and they don't think that they succeeded, they have no idea, because maybe they did succeed, but it's not going to go up for 100 years, but it will. But maybe the efforts they put in are just waiting there for some reason to help raise the curtain. So there's no such sense as there's no concept of defeatism or being threatened by someone else. The more everyone else does it, the more we all benefit. Kol hakavod, we empower everybody. We're proud of everybody's trying to do it. And we're certainly not identifying our self-worth by things that are of this world, temporary and finite and die, and that's for sure. We're saved from that trap also. But here's another very, very deep idea, okay? When When Hashem placed his palm of his hand over Moshe, so Moshe could not see. What happened? What happens when we can't see the big picture? Where does that leave us? It should not leave us distressed and defeated. It should leave us empowered to do the best we can to help everybody, as we always keep saying, see beyond. That's where our potential comes in. That's where we have an opportunity. Look at this idea, which Heshi, the secret weapon here, once pointed out. Vayhi beredes Moshe mehar Sinai. This is after this incident where Hashem covered his face. V'shnei luchos ha'edos biyad Moshe. And the two luchos were in his hand. Beridito minahar, when he comes down from the mountain. Now look at this. Moshe lo yada. Moshe did not know. Ki karan or panav, that the skin of his face was shining like beams of light. Bedabro ito. That means from Hashem speaking to him. Wait a second. Where did the light come from? Hashem covered his face. He didn't see the kavod. He didn't see the R. There were in Kabbalistic terms, Hashem didn't take away the klipa, which then allows you to see the R on the other side, the shell, the barrier. Hashem put it there. So where'd the light come from? So look here at Rashi. Karen is an expression connected with the word karnayim, horns, and the phrase Karen or, the light horns, is used here because light radiates from a point and projects like a horn. Okay? And whence was Moshe privileged to have the rays of glory? A rabbi said that they originated at the time when he was in the cave, stuck in the mountain where he couldn't see, in that cleft of the rock. And the Holy One, blessed be He, put His hand upon his face, as it says, I will shelter thee with my hand. So where did the light come from? Hashem didn't let him see the light. The light came from the fact that Moshe couldn't see the kavod. The light came from inside. Kol kvoda bas melech penima. The light came from Moshe in his struggle. Moshe's struggle, his desperate desire to see the kavod, and Hashem not letting him see it, and his yearning to see it to the greatest capacity that he could see it as a human being, but Hashem making it be Moshe's effort to glimpse it, to get as close as he could to it, to absorb as much as he can from it. That effort that Moshe, initiated within himself, that's the source of the R. From Hashem covering his face, leaving him no other alternative than to draw it from within himself. This is what you could see alive and well in the history of the Jewish people, especially in the last 70 years in Eretz Yisrael. Hashem, it is not yet Yemos HaMashiach, where the Beis HaMikdash from heaven is going to come down and replace the mosque and whatever. It is not that Hashem has picked up the curtain and the whole world falls on their faces and says, Hasdeya es Hashem. No. It is the fact that the curtain is still down. And through our efforts, because we know, Am Yisrael knows very, very well, that the logical interpretation of the facts on the ground just don't do it. And we're actually not interested in them. If we'd be interested in all the logical interpretations, we'd be gone a very, very, very long time ago. Because logic doesn't make any sense here, okay? And that is, by the way, the so-called secular Israelis, okay? Who are driven by this motivation for tikkun olam and are the first on the scene anywhere in the world to do what's right. That comes from Har Sinai. That comes from knowing, that these other people that are suffering, there's a landslide in Haiti or a hurricane or a earthquake. Yeah, these people don't like us. These people feel threatened by us. They won't even vote for us in any vote in the UN. They'll vote against us. But you want to know something? We still don't see them as a threat to us. When they're suffering, we're there. It makes no sense. But we do that. Where is it coming from? Because we're above and beyond that whole limited vision of survival of the fittest. And it's not us. We see that everybody's part of a big picture, and if they don't see it, that's their problem. But we see it, and we're going to act accordingly because that's who we are, and we're going to care about every person. Because when the Jewish people show up within 24 hours in some godforsaken place, well, okay, whatever, on the globe, okay, you know what everybody else knows when they see those planes landing? We are not alone, and it's not, each man for himself. That's not how the Jews operate. And it is not survival of the fittest. That's not how the Jews operate. And everybody wants to boycott them, and so we should protect our resources and not squander them. But we give, we'll spend who knows how many hundreds of millions of shekel to provide medical care and resources for people. When our economy is under threat by them, like, where does this craziness come from? Because we are completely above and beyond that limited, false way of seeing the world. We understand that we understand very well as Am Yisrael, endless nisim that have taken place in Eretz Yisrael, that we know that there's a big picture here. Just the fact, I was watching again I don't know how many documentaries there are about Entebbe, but my father actually learned with one of the pilots on that rescue mission who became a Baal Teshuva, and he said, you don't understand. We were not sure that the runway lights would be on, because they shouldn't have been on. They tried to time it. They came in right behind another plane that needed to refuel. So they turn on the runway lights for the 2 minutes that plane needs to land. And these Israeli planes were trying to get in right there when the runway lights were on. But it was a big, there was no guarantee. This was something that they couldn't control. And if those lights weren't on, they couldn't land. It would be risk of death. So they said, we come there, and, they had, the plane had landed 5 minutes before, or whatever it was, or 10 minutes before, I don't know how long it was before, and they hadn't turned off the lights. And we expected, we were late, it seems they were later than they expected, they were later than they wanted to be behind that plane, and the lights were still on. Little things like that, okay? Little things like that, which the whole entire mission that was the kind of resting on, and it was not in their control at all. So we see a zillion examples of this. So that's how we operate. That's why the Jewish people are happy, among the happiest people, despite everything. We are never defeated. We are the most innovative, the most creative. It's this. It comes from inside, because Hashem has created a situation for us that we know enough, but it's not like on a silver platter. So we have to muster up that enthusiasm and that optimism. Keep turning all lemons into lemonade. The fact that I'll end with this idea and take your points. The fact that there are so many innovations and startups that benefit humanity, that most of them come from the army, from the fact that we're under pressure. We got to come up with solutions to solve our problems, to secure our existence, and that's where these innovations come from.
Esther,
So, yeah.
I went to Barrel Wine this week,
Yeah.
and he shared something that for me I just loved hearing.
Yes.
That Hashem picks the actors, and they're never the ones we think they're going to be.
It's so true.
So when you think of the horse, we are Hashem. Sometimes you think it's going to be these great.
You triggered something. Let me mention something that is also profound and unbelievable. It's because Rosh Chodesh, we just said Rosh Chodesh. Remember this story in Tanakh? I forgot who said it. It's just so profound. Okay, remember the story in Tanakh where David was, Shaul was in early on. He did tshuva in the end. He felt David was a huge threat to his malchus. Again, that's very much tachas hashemesh. And he was trying to kill him. So remember, Yonasan and David made a pact. And he said, tomorrow's going to be Rosh Chodesh, 2-day Rosh Chodesh. They have a big meal. You're not going to show up. The first day, my father probably let it go. But the second day, Yonasan said, my father's going to say, where's David? And then I'm going to say to him, he went back to his family for Rosh Chodesh. If my father flies into a rage and goes crazy, that means he's determined to kill you. But if he doesn't, then it means you're safe and you could come back. But how are we going to know? So he made a little arrangement. You're going to go into the field behind the palace, okay? I'm going to see how my father reacted to your not being at Rosh Chodesh. Then what's going to happen is I'm going to take out my bows and arrows, and I'm going to take out a lad, and I'm going to shoot the arrow. If I shoot it very close and I say to the lad, go get it, it's very close, that means you can come back. But if I shoot it very far and I say to the lad, keep running, it's very far, that means you got to go, okay? So Shaul was angry that David wasn't there at the time, and so Yonasan went into the field. Now put yourself in the position of that lad, the one who's supposed to pick up the arrows. That's the horse, by the way, okay? Was that lad running because Yonatan shot arrows and he was trying to pick them up? Or was Yonatan shooting arrows so that that lad could run? That lad thought he was running to pick up the arrows. That was not what was happening. He was thinking, I'm reacting the way I should to this situation. That wasn't what was happening. He was running because Yonatan had to shoot arrows to protect David. And he had no idea about that. In other words, sometimes we think we're reacting to a situation. No, we're not reacting to a situation. Hashem is actually sending us on a mission. That situation that we're in is not just an opportunity to react. It's actually a mission in and of itself. You hear? So we think we're just dealing with the situation. The situation that's causing us to run, okay, is the mission itself. So sometimes, chas v'shalom, if a tragedy happens, and that's causing us to, we think, oh, we just should react to it the right way. That's not true. It's not just react to it the same way. It's what is this causing me, how can I go further and grow from this situation? What is this situation forcing me to accomplish? What is this, how is it driving me forward? It's not just reaction. It's where do I go from here because of it? You hear? Yeah.
So somebody sent me this WhatsApp about the rabbi of South Africa.
Yeah, we mentioned it, yes.
Yes, so he said that we are a nace from Hashem. We are so lucky, like the door that came out of Mitzrayim, who saw the Yam Suf, because we are in the generation when was such a nace that Israel was formed. And then it's the 70th anniversary, and